Oh, hi, everyone. Welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 18, The Producers. Before we get into the episode, let's get some business out of the way. First, let's talk about our next episode. So while today's episode is in the stuff that makes us laugh category, our next episode sits firmly in the stuff that makes Jeremy cry category. What could it be about? Probably something about grown children and their parents navigating their complex relationships, right? Well, you're wrong. Hang on. Yeah, hang on a second. I'm double checking, and yes, that's exactly what our next entry is about. In our next episode, we'll be looking at Amy Tan's The Joy Luck Club. Spoiler alert, I cried on page 2. Moving on to the West Wing kind of weekly and only in the intro. I'm currently halfway through season 3. My only comment is this. Knowing that this show ran for more than 4 seasons kind of takes away any tension over whether he's going to get reelected. Not that any of us knew that at the time, so that's probably an unfair criticism. Also, the next episode is called The Two Bartletts, which I can only assume involves Martin Sheen, a split screen, and a fake goatee. How will Leo tell them apart? If you have any comments, questions, or corrections that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. And with that, on with the show. Mel Brooks's The Producers. Welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. My name is Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw.
We hope everybody's doing very well.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm great. This episode, we're not recording it on the day that it airs, obviously, but this episode's going to be broadcast on my birthday.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. This is going to be my birthday episode.
For those of you listening the day it comes out, happy birthday.
Yeah, assuming it comes out on June 5th. That is my birthday.
Oh, that's real sweet.
Yeah.
That's real sweet. What do you want for your birthday? Do you want to do a podcast about the producers?
Yes, I do.
Happy birthday. I got you just what you wanted.
Thanks, babe. So yeah, this is an episode we have been thinking about doing for a long time. We actually mentioned it in the promo before the first episode we ever released because we were trying to think of examples of adaptations that weren't just a book to a movie. We were trying to be clear that we were doing other things. So we were like, how about a movie to a stage musical to a movie musical? That's a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing that happened that one time that Mel Brooks did it.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about The Producers. Long pause.
Well, I don't know what I want to say. This is a big one.
Yeah.
This is one I like a lot.
Yeah.
So
why don't you talk about your relationship to the various forms of the producers?
Well, my relationship to the various forms of the producers starts with my relationship with a man named Melvin Kaminsky. More commonly known as Mel Brooks. I grew up on Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Did you grow up on Mel Brooks at all?
No, not at all. We had one Mel Brooks movie that we watched over and over again, but I don't think we even knew it was a Mel Brooks movie. Like, I don't think we understood that was like a whole oeuvre, which was Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right.
But we loved it because it was a funny Robin Hood movie that had Carrie Elways in it, not because it was like a Mel Brooks film. I don't think I saw really any of his other movies until later in life.
And I feel like that's, of all the Mel Brooks movies, that's the one that's like, if we were to make a Venn diagram of the things that you're passionate about, it's a Mel Brooks movie that has Carrie Elwes, Roger Rees, Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. I mean, I love that movie. And I love Robin Hood. Like, I was always a big, like, Robin Hood fan. Robin Hood Men in Tights has the distinction of being the first movie I ever watched on Netflix streaming. I remember that. I remember because I was an early adopter of the iPad, and I remember like getting in bed and going, all right, I guess I'll try this out. I'll just like call up a movie on my little
hello internet. I would like one movie, please.
Yeah, on my little weird like Star Trek screen. I guess I'll watch Robin Hood Men in Tights. I remember it so distinctly lying there thinking, this is the future. This is actually the future. So the future of streaming video for me was ushered in by Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So Mel Brooks was definitely a bigger part of my childhood than it sounds like it was for yours.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that?
We were, in my house, we were Mel Brooks fans. Like he wasn't just the guy who was in these movies. He was like, no, he made these movies. Like I grew up on The 2,000-Year-Old Man, which is one of the best things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I grew up on Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles when I was old enough. These were things that I loved.
Yeah.
And The Producers was definitely one of those things.
Totally.
I think that got introduced to me a little bit later. I'm sure my parents would probably disagree, but I feel like there was this aspect of, oh yeah, a huge part of this is about Hitler, so we're going to hold off on this for a little bit, you know? But maybe I'm just kind of creating that out of whole cloth for my childhood.
I don't know.
But I loved Mel Brooks
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
So The Producers was always something that was really important to me. I'm going to get into kind of how much I love the musical and what experiences I had around the musical probably about the midway point.
Yeah, but let's start with the movie. What is it, 1968?
1967.
The 1967 movie starring Gene Wilder and Zero Mostel as Leo Bloom and Max Bialystock. Now, we have historically not done a great job in describing the plot of the things that we are talking about for people who have not read or seen them. So this is our segment that we are calling, we're either going to call it Back of the Book or Back of the Box. You have there before you, I believe, the Blu-ray or the DVD.
This is the Blu-ray of the original movie.
The original movie, The Producers, and you are holding it up, and I believe you are going to read out loud what it says on the back.
From the endlessly funny mind of filmmaker Mel Brooks comes the Oscar-winning explosion of pure comic lunacy about low-rent Broadway producer Max Bialystock and his high-strung accountant Leo Bloom. They discover that, with the help of a few gullible investors, they can make more money on a flop than on a hit. So, armed with the worst show ever written, Springtime for Hitler, and an equally horrific cast, this double-dealing duo is banking on disaster. But when their sure-to-offend musical becomes a surprise smash hit, they find themselves in the middle of a Broadway blitzkrieg.
Wow.
Here's the deal.
Yeah, how is that for accuracy for you?
Super accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
That's it. So one thing that I just want to get out of the way right now, because we watched all of this recently. One thing that's kind of a running joke for us whenever we watch a movie is every time the plot starts, we look at each other and go, movie just started.
Yeah.
Movie just, you're like half an hour in, movie just started.
And sometimes it's 5 minutes in and sometimes it's an hour in. Sometimes, as in like the case of like The Lord of the Rings, it's the end of the movie.
Yeah. But usually I feel like the thing that makes us look at each other is something happens.
Right.
Characters meet. It's usually bigger than just like a line of dialogue.
Yeah, usually it's like an event.
And in this, it is a line of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably the most important line of dialogue that Mel Brooks has ever written.
Yes, and that is...
Under the right circumstances, a producer could make more money with a flop than he could with a hit.
And then light bulb goes on.
Oh, so just to talk a little bit more, Max Bialystock is a Broadway producer.
A crooked Broadway producer.
Assume for a moment that you are a dishonest man.
Assume away.
He's a shit. And he's down and out. And Leo Bloom is an accountant who's come to do his books.
Right.
And he basically finds out that on his last play, he raised more money than he needed and used the extra for himself. But it was fine. Accidentally.
Yeah, because the play closed in a night, and so he didn't have to pay back his backers, because you only have to pay back your backers if the play makes back its money, I guess. Is that how producing works?
I'm pretty sure that's how producing works. Theater's your background.
I know.
That's your bag, sweetie.
I literally have a degree in this.
Sorry, I assumed that was your bag.
I wasn't a producer, though. I didn't do the producing track. I didn't take any of those classes.
You're an artistic.
Yes, I am. I am an artistic. I took one class in budgeting.
You probably have. That gives you more experience.
I had to do like Excel spreadsheets.
But the light bulb goes off.
Yes.
Because basically, what Leo Bloom says, he just poses it as some academic accounting theory, is a producer could make $1 million if they raise $1 million. Because you can only sell 100% of a show to your backers, 100% of the profits. What you do is you sell 20,000% of the show if you know it's going to be a flop.
Right.
Because if it's a flop, no one's going to come asking for profit because there's no profit,
I'm actually
obviously.
surprised no one's ever done this for real.
I bet this actually does happen. I feel like there's a whole other conversation we can have about VC funding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he says this. Bialystock immediately says, "Oh, this is now our scheme. We are now partners."
He said, "Your scheme," and Bloom says, "What scheme? What? No, it's not my scheme.
It's not my scheme.
What are you talking about?"
I was just merely posing some academic accounting theory.
And he says, "No, we're doing this.
We're doing this." So what they do is they try to find the worst play ever written.
Yes.
A surefire flop. They do.
They find the worst actors.
The worst actors.
The worst director.
Everything.
Yeah.
And then it ends up being a hit.
Right.
That's,
we did everything wrong. Where did we go right?
That's the movie.
Yes.
Like, I think that's the quickest we've ever described any movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
And I think it's worth saying Mel Brooks won an Oscar for this screenplay.
Yes. It's a good screenplay.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's so clear.
Yeah.
It's so concise.
Yeah.
So, was this a movie that you, like, remember the first time you ever saw it, or it was a movie you'd seen and thought was good?
No, I don't really remember. I feel like I mean, it's definitely like in the culture. I'm actually not sure I saw it prior to seeing the musical, because I've never seen the musical on stage. But the movie musical I saw in the theater. I remember seeing it in the theater when it came out. I have a pretty strong memory of that. But I feel like it's one of those things that's like kind of in the culture. And I don't really remember the first time I saw it, just like you don't necessarily remember the first time you saw, like, I don't know, an episode of Frasier or The Simpsons or whatever. Like, it's just something that exists in the world that has been there for all time. Yeah, like Frasier. I don't know why that's the first thing I thought of. No idea why.
We're building a Venn diagram of your interests.
I wish Kelsey Grammer wasn't such a shit. I would enjoy Frasier so much more.
I want to be clear. The reason we're talking about this right now is because your brain decided to bring up Frasier. I didn't bring it up. And now we're talking about how Kelsey Grammer's kind of a shit. Would you like to get back to The Producers?
Yeah, let's do that. Oh,
so the movie really hinges on two characters.
Yeah.
Bialystock and Bloom.
Yes.
It's Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder.
Yes.
I have this to say. I think Zero Mostel is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gene Wilder is a treasure of a man.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that statement.
I'm fine with both of those statements.
I think Gene Wilder's incredible.
Yeah.
I love him. I think
he's turned into kind of a crotchety old guy. Is he alive?
He's dead.
Oh, God.
He died last year.
Oh,
It was
no.
really sad.
I remember that.
It was super sad.
I'm sorry.
I am not cutting this at all.
But I just remember him making some statements about the new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory like a while back. And it, like, I'm not saying that was a good movie and we're going to do it for the podcast, so we won't go into that too much. But like,
I think it's universally viewed as not a good movie.
I really enjoy it. But I just remember like the spirit of his comments was more like, no one could ever match my performance. How dare you, type of a thing.
Okay, he's right.
I'm not saying he's not, but I'm just saying that's kind of a shitty thing to say about yourself to another actor who should be your colleague.
All you're telling me is that in his old age, he became one of those kind of people that says accurate things often.
Okay.
Sometimes he says things that are true.
I'm very sorry that I led us down this path. I did not remember that he was dead. I would not have tainted his memory.
Gene Wilder, I will say again.
I remember now.
And his memory are a national treasure.
R.I.P.
I adore him as an actor. I've never, even movies that I've seen him in where I didn't enjoy the movie, he's amazing in everything.
Yes.
I've never seen him be anything less than fantastic in a movie.
And unique. A unique presence in any film, which we're going to come to when we talk about the musical and how we feel about that character, the interpretation of that character.
I think the best thing I can say, if anyone's listening to this and they haven't seen the movie, I think there's a lot of comedies that this is true for.
Mm-hmm.
The first act is one of the best first acts in any comedy I've ever seen.
Just like the scene where the scene that's leading up to quote unquote the movie starting, you mean?
Yeah.
Like where they're in the office having this conversation.
And once the movie starts, like even when he says that line, everything that's in that scene, basically the whole first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's about minute 15 that the light bulb goes on.
Yeah. It all takes place in Bialystock's office.
Right.
Which I think led certain people to say it should be a play or a musical because it doesn't take place in too many locations.
Right.
But the whole thing that whole beginning takes place in Bialystock's office. That entire thing, once from the minute one until they leave the office, it's perfect.
Yep.
I really think it's perfect.
It's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Super, super funny. You learn so many things about the characters. Both the characters are drawn so clearly. Their relationship is drawn so clearly. You know what they want. You know what they're like. You know who they are. You know everything you need to know.
I would say also too that like perhaps in contrast to some of the rest of the movie that comes after, it holds up.
Oh yeah.
Because there's some of this movie that does not hold up.
Nope.
There's actually a lot.
Yep.
And we can talk about it in a minute.
It was 51 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, so long ago.
Yeah, time passes.
That's just wild. That's just wild.
And now we're on the nature of time.
We were born closer to when this movie came out than now is to when the movie musical came out. And that blows my damn mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So,
yes.
The whole first part of the movie is great. Gene Wilder as Leo Bloom, he plays the character. The character is kind of a nebbish.
Mm-hmm.
He's very timid.
He's neurotic.
He's very neurotic. He's got a little blue blanket from his childhood.
He gets hysterical.
That he gets very hysterical. And then there's Bialystok.
Yes.
Bialystok is
crass.
Stands in contrast to him at every turn.
He is earthy and crass and
looks like he smells.
Looks like definitely smells like bad breath and BO. Definitely. He is lewd and like not so much dishonest.
Also, assume for a second that he is a dishonest man.
Yeah, no, well, what I was going to say is not so much dishonest as amoral.
Yes.
You know?
I would agree with that.
You agree with that distinction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's not a crook, but
he's a bit of a crook.
He is not by definition a crook, but he certainly doesn't care about doing crooked things if it will advance him. And he's greedy. He's greedy. He wants money. He wants wine, women, and song. Yep.
There's literally a line where he screams to the heavens, "Oh Lord, I want that money."
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He kneels in prayer.
What I don't want to do is just recount everything in that scene.
I know, but it's so good.
It's one of the best scenes. I've always had kind of a short list in my head of comedies where the first 15 minutes are like the best ever.
Yeah.
And it's like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And The Producers.
Yeah.
I can't think of many movies where the first 20 minutes are as good as those are.
Right. About
telling you the world that everyone lives in and what the characters are like and how funny this is going to be and just how well crafted the jokes are.
Yep.
I don't want this episode to turn into me explaining every joke.
No, let's not do that. Do you want to talk about the parts of the movie that don't hold up so great?
Let's jump right into it because I'm not going to pretend there aren't any.
Okay. So this movie, say it, 67?
Yeah.
Okay. So this movie is a product of its time in terms of humor, in terms of what it is appropriate and not appropriate to make jokes about, and indeed whether or not those jokes are funny.
Yeah. And let me just start by saying if there is one central joke in the show that we can hold up to compare all the other jokes to,
yes,
it's the fact that the show they find is called Springtime for Hitler.
Right. And the joke is that Hitler is ridiculous and we're going to make fun of Hitler.
Right.
And I'm on board with that.
I want to read a quote really quickly.
Yeah, you go ahead.
About Mel Brooks's feeling about this.
Yeah.
I was never crazy about Hitler. If you stand on a soapbox and trade rhetoric with a dictator, you never win. That's what they do so well. They seduce people. But if you ridicule them, bring them down with laughter, they can't win. You show how crazy they are.
That's fantastic.
That is the central kind of mission statement of this.
Mel Brooks is a Jewish man who fought in World War II.
Yep.
He is entitled to make fun of Hitler.
Yep.
And as is anyone, actually, as is anyone. But he has that sort of personal connection to it. Right? Do we agree with that?
We agree.
So that is, I think, a really good example of punching up. So in comedy, we have the conceit of punching up versus punching down.
Yes.
So punching up is you are making fun of someone who is more powerful than you in the structure of society. Punching down is making fun of someone who's weaker than you. That is bad. That's bad. Punching down is bad.
It is common.
It is common, but bad.
Yes.
And in 2018, as opposed to 1967, I think we have this understanding about making fun of people who are like less privileged than you is not funny and is wrong. I feel like that is more controversial than perhaps it should be.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
But that is certainly my feeling about it. How do you feel?
Well, I will say this. In the years of our relationship,
yes,
you have held me to an often uncomfortable standard when it comes to this.
Yes, I'm very sorry.
And you have ruined many things that I find funny.
I'm so sorry.
By pointing out the moral implications of finding those things funny. And as uncomfortable as they may make me feel in the moment.
You are making me sound like the worst feminist killjoy right now. Although I think I somewhere have a button that says feminist killjoy.
Yeah, there you go.
I wear that label actually with pride.
And I love you. And you do wear it with pride. So that is our relationship.
Great.
I am not proud of it. But that's where we live.
Yes.
That is where we are in this moment right now.
Yes.
So, yes, I really respect your view of punching up versus punching down.
Yep.
And it's something I've felt that way a long time about stuff, but I never quite put it in those words.
Yeah.
That you have always done for me. So I do appreciate that.
Yes.
So what are some examples you can think of in this movie?
In the 1967 movie, because I want to be clear,
of punching up.
Of punching up. Well, hang on just one second.
Sorry.
Yes, we're going to get to examples. I just want to be clear. I am constructing this movie, because we haven't talked about the more recent versions of it, as a product of its time. And I actually think it's really interesting as you go from 1967 to 2001 to 2005, when the movie was made, you actually see this stuff getting better. Like there's an evolution. So what I don't want anyone to take away is me saying Mel Brooks is a jerk who punches down, because I actually don't believe that.
But Mel Brooks in 1967 punched down a little bit.
100%.
Yeah.
But so did everybody.
Yeah.
But
not everybody grew.
That's right. We would be remiss if we held 1967 to the standards of 2018 without exploring the growth of the artist Mel Brooks. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't think Mel Brooks is a jerk. I think he's very good. And I think that his early movies are very problematic because of the time that they were made in.
Mm-hmm. But I think he's always the type of person who's willing to learn, and willing to extend. Like,
he strikes me that way.
One of the things that I love is a movie that we watched together that you did not care for was Blazing Saddles.
I don't like the movie Blazing Saddles.
I love it.
Yeah.
A huge part of that movie is race.
Yep.
And it was incredibly important to him that not everyone in the writer's room was white.
Yeah. I think that's great.
I think he is.
Because that wasn't a common thing when that movie was made.
No, not at all.
Like, to care about that.
I think he is the type of creative person who recognizes his own limitations almost always in retrospect.
Yeah.
And often while they're happening.
Right.
But not always while they're happening.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So,
what are some examples you can think of in the movie The Producers from 1967 where Mel Brooks punched up?
He makes fun of Nazis a lot.
A lot. I think he punches up a little bit at kind of a haughty culture.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think there's some classism going on
here.
The
classism of theater goers.
Yeah.
New York theater goers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally.
What are some examples you can think of where he punches down?
He objectifies women.
Yes.
A lot.
Let's stick a pin in that for a second.
We're going to stick a pin in that because we're going to do female characters a little underwritten sort of when we've talked about all three.
Yeah.
All three things.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say in this version and not the other two, a woman is referred to as a toy.
Yes.
I have a bunch of money and now I'm going to buy myself a toy.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that means I'm going to hire a sexy secretary. It's a thing that happens in this movie.
Sure is.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not great. I would say the most problematic for me,
yeah.
There are a lot of gay jokes and trans jokes in the 1967 movie The Producers that play on stereotypes that were extremely prevalent, I'm sure, in 1967. But in 2018, not only are they not funny, but like they're based on stereotypes that I'm sure still exist in places that aren't like Metro Boston where we live. Do you know what I mean? But they're just not in the culture in the same way. Like,
no.
I'm certainly not sitting here saying like everything's perfect for gay people now.
Can I give a quick background on the stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just to put it in context a little bit, the structure of the show, the first thing they do is they meet. They discover that they have this plan. Bialystok has to rope Bloom in, which he does. Then they have to find a play. They do find the play, Springtime for Hitler. They find the author, Franz Liebken.
Yep.
A Nazi living in the United States
yes.
who was not a member of the Nazi Party.
I was never a member of the Nazi Party.
Yeah. He's Kenny Mars. He's great. Then, once they have the play, once they've secured that, they need to get a director.
The worst director in New York.
So they get Roger Debris.
Yes.
Who lives in New York with his assistant.
Common law assistant.
Well,
They don't say that in the.
That was added in the musical.
Added later. Yeah.
He's just his assistant.
His assistant.
Yeah. Carmen Gia.
Yeah.
Which I think is next in a line of a good running joke of us not knowing that something was actually a car.
It was a car.
Because in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's a character named Ford Prefect, and I never knew that was a car.
That's
and then you never knew that Carmen Gia was a car.
I did not know that Carmen Gia was a car.
So they meet Roger Debris. He is gay.
Yeah.
Carmen Gia is gay. So they live in New York.
Yep.
And when they go to meet them for the first time, Roger comes out wearing a ball gown.
Yes.
Now, in the plot, they say he's doing it because he's going to a costume party.
Right.
But that's kind of beside the point.
Yes, it is beside the point. Do you want me to talk about this? So, and we talked about this a little bit as we were watching the movie, and I feel like we kind of came to a good conclusion together about why it wasn't funny and etc. So this is something that I'm actually coming to now and trying to evolve my thinking on. Because I have some transgender friends, and something that they have said to me that I hadn't thought about until kind of recently is a joke that is based on the fact that a man is wearing a dress is offensive and hurtful.
Can be offensive.
Can be offensive and hurtful. That's right. And you know, it makes you think about all of the comedy kind of throughout the history of comedy that is based on men in drag, right? That's the basis of the joke. This is a man.
This will be the second time we bring up Monty Python in this episode.
That's right. This is a man wearing a dress, and that's funny because men don't wear dresses. And it's not really funny if you think about it. So
it can run the risk
of not being funny. And sorry, I'm making very blanket statements, but I'm trying to express a perspective that I'm sort of recently been made aware of, and trying, as I said before, trying to sort of evolve my thinking around this personally. So then what you brought up was Monty Python's Life of Brian. The character of Brian's mother is played by Terry Jones and is really funny. It's a really funny character. And what we talked about was, is it funny because Terry Jones is a man playing that character, or is it just a really funny character? And what we kind of came to the conclusion of is that character would actually be funny played by anyone. And maybe there's a different conversation to be had about an all-male comedy troupe casting their male members as women because there weren't women in the group, because there's this understanding that women aren't as funny as men. I feel like let's set that to one side, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's a different conversation.
But there's that's a thing, like women aren't funny. Like that's a whole thing.
Yes, it is. That exists in
the
culture.
But I'm saying let's ignore that for the moment.
Yeah.
That character as written would be funny played by a woman.
Yes.
The joke is not, this is a man wearing a dress. In this case, the case of The Producers, this male character that we understand to be a gay man comes out wearing a dress, and we are supposed to laugh because he is a man, but he's wearing a dress. And that's the joke. There's really no other joke.
I think that is a valid reading of this scene.
Yes. That's what I mean when I say it's like a transphobic joke as opposed to a gay joke. I'm sure that wasn't even something that was in anybody's mind in 1967. They're not even like, it's not even like, let's make fun of transgender people, because I don't think that was in the culture really at all. It's kind of let's make fun of a man doing something that's not masculine.
Yeah.
That joke doesn't hold up. There's nothing, to me personally, there's nothing behind it that makes it a funny joke, unless you have that understanding that a man doing something that's feminine is funny.
Yeah. I think that the biggest part for me that kind of goes along with that interpretation of it is that in the movie, Roger Dupree's not much of a character.
Right.
He's not, you don't really learn much about him. There's not really any depth to him. He just exists for this joke.
Yes.
He exists for this joke of the scene, and then shows up a few more times in the course of the movie.
That's right.
He's more of a prop than anything else.
That's right. If that character was a female character, it wouldn't be, the joke wouldn't work. Because if a woman walks out onto set wearing a dress, no one would laugh. That's not a joke. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The character is a joke based on who they are, not anything that they do or say that's funny.
Yeah.
And that we're not laughing at the funny things that they do. We're meant to be laughing at them because being gay and wearing a dress is funny. Mm-hmm. And that's the premise of the joke.
Right.
And in 2018, that is not something that is acceptable.
Right. And to be fair, that was something that became unacceptable well before 2018.
Yeah.
And so, for example, like in the show, in the musical, the way they handle gay characters I think there's a very different perspective that it takes.
I agree with you completely.
Which we'll get into.
We're only talking about the 1967 movie right now.
But just to kind of go along with what you were saying. So one of the things that I find with this movie, to talk about it more as kind of as a whole, there's so much fucking awesome comedy in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best written comedies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It meanders a little bit.
Yeah, it totally does.
That's another problem that I have with it. Those are really my only two problems, is that it punches down a little bit.
Yep.
A big bit at
more
certain
than
times.
A little. More than a little.
I guess I'm only saying a little in terms of screen time.
Yeah.
It punches down real hard.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. But also, it meanders a lot.
Yeah.
I think that it was an instinct on Mel Brooks' side to fill it with as many jokes and as many funny characters as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a short movie. The whole movie's less than 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It gets what it needs to gets done what it needs to do really quickly. But there's so many little characters that they meet throughout New York. An example I can think of is when they go to meet Franz Liebken at his apartment.
Yes.
There's a woman down by the front door.
The concierge.
And she's real New York.
Yeah.
And she adds nothing to the plot.
No.
But it's kind of funny.
It's a funny conversation that they have with a ridiculous person.
But it's not plot driven.
No, it's not.
It's just a comedy is an opportunity to deliver as many jokes as possible.
That's right.
And that's Mel Brooks to a T.
Totally.
Just as many jokes as you possibly can. Get them out there.
Yeah.
And then when they made the musical, they ended up excising almost all of those.
Yeah, because they had to have room for songs.
Yeah, there's so many little characters that got the chop. And I think deservedly so.
Right.
I don't think they need to be there from a plot perspective.
Yeah.
I think you could make another version of this movie that's like an hour long.
Well, yeah. Plus, like, you don't want to have to pay all those actors to have to be there 8 shows a week, as opposed to you have to pay an actor to come in and do one scene for a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. So that's my feeling about the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's hysterical.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes. It is
problematic 50 years later.
Yes.
But it's great.
Yeah, it is a good, solid, funny movie that is very much of its time. It does not hold up, but I feel like a lot of comedy from that time doesn't hold up because of just in terms of what it's acceptable to make jokes about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that brings us to 2001. Not 34 years later.
Picture it. 2001, New York City.
So my understanding is, and this is from Mel Brooks, basically David Geffen came to him and said, hey, the producer should be a musical. Do you want to write a musical?
And he said, no.
And he said no. And then he thought about it and said yes.
Yes.
And I think it's, the thing I like looking back at is kind of where Mel Brooks' career was at this point. Like, he was huge. In the 70s and 80s, Mel Brooks was huge.
He was world famous in Poland.
Yeah. And then in the 90s, he did Robin Hood Men in Tights.
A fine film.
Which, for our generation, is a fine film.
Yes.
It does not rank very highly in his oeuvre.
That's correct.
Oeuvre.
That's right.
Then he did Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yes.
Which I enjoy.
Yes.
I like that movie.
We watched it together.
Mm-hmm.
You made me watch it in black and white.
Which makes it better. That's for a different... I wasn't going to bring that up. That's something we'll talk about in another episode. That's nope. Nope. We're talking about that later.
Okay.
Because that's weird for you to just introduce. That's a thing about me. But it didn't do well.
Right.
His career, like, he was basically done. That was the last movie he ever made.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he was, like, down and out. I'm just saying I think he was...
he's rich as Midas.
Yeah, he's rich and aged.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do anything.
He's retired. Like, people retire.
Like, I don't think he needs to do anything to stay working.
Yeah.
He only needs to do things now if he really wants to do them.
Right.
So he decided, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make a musical out of the producers.
Mm-hmm.
So it all happened in around 2000, 2001. A couple things that I have kind of found out about it over the years.
Yep.
One, he did not write it by himself. He wrote all the songs himself. He certainly had someone helping with orchestration, but the book was co-written by Thomas Meehan.
Right. Who wrote Annie.
Who wrote Annie and also wrote the screenplay for To Be or Not to Be.
Cool.
For the remake that Mel Brooks was in, which we're going to cover in a future episode.
Yep.
Which I enjoy a lot.
That's where the joke that I just made comes from,
yes.
about being world famous in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
If you explain the joke, it makes it funnier.
Oh, you're learning, Grasshopper. It was directed by Susan Stroman.
Yes.
Who is a choreographer
Mm-hmm.
and director. Do you know much about Susan Stroman and kind of her place in musicals.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
Broadway.
she tends to do. She's always director choreographer, and she tends to do like really big splashy musicals. But I think The Producers was the first really big thing that she did. If I'm not mistaken, I could be totally wrong.
And it's big.
Yeah,
this was like I just remember I couldn't find any information about what the budget was for it. Admittedly, because I didn't look very hard, but the budget was huge.
Yeah.
I always
it might
remember
have
it being
been the
really
most
big.
expensive show up to that point.
Yeah.
It may have been.
And I think up till now, up until recently, it was like the highest grossing musical of all time.
Yeah.
I think Hamilton has surpassed it.
Yeah, maybe. I know that the recently, actually not that recently now, when Shrek the musical came out, that was the most expensive up to that point, and that was a really big deal because I remember going to see it and going, I don't know where they put the money. It looks terrible.
It's the ears, the little ears.
But it may have been, I mean, it certainly was the longest running for a while. I'm not sure if it got surpassed. I think it did.
Yeah.
We did a lot of good research on this, as you can tell.
So much good research. We watched all the things. We watched all of the stuff.
Yeah.
Then they made a musical.
Yes.
A couple things about it. It was starring Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick.
Yes.
In the Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder roles, respectively.
That's right.
It was big. It was really, really big.
Yeah.
It got nominated for,
it won the most Tonys.
All the Tonys.
All the Tonys.
It won all the Tonys.
Yes.
I actually remember this factoid. The only Tonys it lost were to itself.
Right.
Because
That's right. It won in every category it was nominated, but it lost in some because it was nominated more than once for different actors, I assume. Yeah.
It was a big one.
Yeah.
And I was so excited about it as a teenager. I was so excited that this was actually a thing that was happening.
Yeah.
And I will just say this kind of quickly. Like, I've seen the show a couple of times.
Yeah.
I saw it twice. I did get to see it a number of years later. I got to see it in Boston when in the touring company. But then I did see it on Broadway.
Yeah.
In that original run with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick.
Yeah.
It was actually really sweet. My mom, it was a graduation present for me for graduating high school.
That's nice.
She's huge into musicals, into Broadway musicals, and grew up in New York City and had seen everything. And she knew that I was really excited about it, so she got me 4 tickets. And she never said, you should invite 2 of your friends and then we'll all go down together and see it. She just said, here's 4 tickets, invite your friends. So I invited 3 friends, and I went to her and said, so I've got 3 friends. What's going on? She's like, oh, so I don't get to see it? Okay, that's fine. And my mother, Lois Latour, drove us down to New York City and
did not go.
Literally, waited. She waited in the car, basically. Oh my God. She just walked around. In retrospect, maybe one of the shittiest things I've ever done.
You didn't know.
But I
didn't do it on purpose.
I was 18. I didn't do it.
think about it.
And we loved it.
Yeah.
We loved it. It was a really nice group.
Yeah.
But I got to see it with Nathan Lane. I got to see it with Matthew Broderick. We waited outside the door to say hi to people and try to get autographs and stuff. And no one really came out. Bernadette Peters was there that night for some reason. And she walked out and everyone was standing over by the main door. And I turned around and 2 actors walked out of the side door. Roger Bart, who played Carmen Gia.
Yep.
And he then was Victor Frankenstein in the Young Frankenstein musical.
Right.
That Mel Brooks did years later.
Yep.
And Katie Huffman, who played Ulla.
Right.
The receptionist, the Swedish receptionist.
Right.
They walked out a side door. And I basically, in my stupid 18-year-old way, kind of ran them down.
Yeah.
And was like, hi, the show was great. They were the fucking sweetest people I have ever met.
That's great.
They were so unbelievably nice. And Katie Huffman was very pretty, so I mostly talked to Roger Bart. They were so sweet, though. And they signed my playbill. It was really, really nice.
Someday you will buy your mother Hamilton tickets to make up for the fact that you shut her out of The Producers.
Yeah. Thanks for putting that out there.
That's just out in the universe now.
Fantastic. That's a lot of pressure on me.
I'm so sorry.
Because I can't afford to buy them the real way. So one thing that I would like to do right now,
yes.
I don't want to spend a ton of time doing it. If anyone listened to our Fun Home episode, this whole episode isn't going to be just running through all the songs.
Right.
But I would like to take a few minutes and run through just to kind of show the ways in which they expanded the original movie to be a Broadway show.
That's great.
So
That's great. Do you have a list in front of you of the songs?
I will in 1 second. So it starts with a song called Opening Night.
Yes.
So the whole show basically starts when Max Bialystock's latest play, Funny Boy, a musical adaptation of Hamlet, is flopping on Broadway.
If that was real, we could do it for the podcast.
Oh, it'd be great. It'd be great. So it's opening night. And that leads directly into a great song called The King of Broadway. instead of the whole thing starting in Max Bialystok's office and getting to meet him just as kind of a solitary character, you really meet him in the context of his world as a failure.
Yes.
So it's everyone coming out of the show talking about how awful he is and how much his shows suck now and how much of a failure he is. And then it's him basically talking to like the beggars in the street, just street people, about how he used to be the king of Broadway.
And now he's not.
And it's one of my favorite songs in the entire show.
Yes.
It's really, really good.
Yes.
And it was a chance for whoever plays Bialystok to kind of chew up every piece of scenery that's possible.
Almost literally.
And Nathan Lane he did an amazing job at it. So it's a great, great song. It also has one of the best lines in the whole thing that was an improvisation from Nathan Lane.
Yeah.
Where he's talking about his mentor, Boris Tomaszewski.
Yeah.
And everyone's very impressed. And he says, I remember on his deathbed, he said something to me and it's in Yiddish. And someone says, what did he say? He says, I don't know. I don't speak Yiddish.
But in my heart, I knew what he was saying. He was saying when you're down and out and everybody thinks you're finished, that's the time to stand up on your 2 feet and shout, who do you have to fuck to get a break in this town?
Now that line was an improvisation.
Oh, good.
He added that in a rehearsal. That was not, I don't think Mel Brooks wanted to drop any F-bombs in the show. But
And yet
Nathan
here we
Lane,
are.
And yet here we are. Nathan Lane did. So I love that song.
Yeah.
That leads to the first time that Bialystok and Bloom meet.
Yes.
So now we're in Bialystok's office. Bloom shows up. He basically comes in and starts talking to him, and that's when one of the little old ladies shows up.
Yes.
We haven't talked about the little old ladies yet.
Right. So can I explain
Please.
it? So the way that Bialystok, he pronounces it, gets his money for his shows is there are a lot of rich little old ladies who need one more good ride in the hay from Max Bialystok. And
We'll say a roll in the hay.
He provides that service in exchange for money to fund his shows.
Yep.
So that's where he gets all of his backer money.
And they
for his
always make
shows.
the checks out to the name of the show, and the name of the
Cash.
show is always Cash.
Yeah.
The show always starts, and the movie starts with Bloom basically interrupting one of these liaisons
liaison.
between a little old lady. They all have different names. We don't know any of their real names. We just know them in terms of what they say. And the first one we meet is Hold Me, Touch Me.
Hold me, touch me.
Yeah. So Bialystok is with Hold Me, Touch Me. Bloom interrupts them. And then she leaves, and basically that's when the show starts, because
Right.
Bloom has his little epiphany.
Right.
And then there's a song called We Can Do It. And this is the song where Bialystok is really seeing the dollar signs. And there's a difference, because in the movie, basically he doesn't 100% convince Bloom to join him, but he says, hang out with me for the day. And it essentially ends with him saying, you're a nobody. Don't you want to be a somebody?
Yeah.
This is a way you can do that. And Bloom says, yes, I do want that. I want everything I've ever seen in the movies.
Right.
In this version, he makes his plea, and Bloom says no,
Yes.
and he leaves.
Yes.
And then we go to his accounting firm,
Right.
where there's another song called I Want to Be a Producer. So this is probably one of the biggest changes they make.
Yes. In the movie, this is not something he had ever considered before. He's just kind of a nebbishy, nobody guy, and he has this sort of encounter and with Bialystok, and he realizes he wants more than what he has in his life and what he had ever envisioned for himself. But in the musical, he has this Bloom has this sort of revelation. He makes this confession to Bialystok that when I was a child, I was taken to see one of your shows, and I've kept the ticket stub ever since. And ever since I was a child, I've had a secret desire in my heart. I want to be a Broadway producer. So that when he sings the song "I Want to Be a Producer," he's singing about something that he has held in his heart for a long time. It's his secret desire.
Yeah.
So that's I would say, like, in terms of the motivation of the characters, definitely the biggest change from the original movie, don't you think?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably the two biggest changes are what Brooks does to the Bloom character, and also what he does to Ula.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm just going to say this. I hate this song. It's a
Okay.
good song. I like the song.
Yeah.
I hate what it does for Bloom's character.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I like about Bloom in the movie, in the original movie, is that he's kind of an everyman. He's a nebbish. I think anyone can identify with feeling like they deserve more in life, but not knowing how to get it.
Yeah.
And then someone comes along that says, I can give you what you've always wanted,
Right.
which is just to be more than what you are now.
Right.
But in this, he has a very specific goal.
It's very specific, yeah.
And throughout the course of the song, you find out what his view of that goal is.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things he wants to do is objectify many women.
Yeah, like his visualization of what it means to be a producer is unpleasant, and it makes you not like him.
I don't like the Bloom in the musical nearly as much as I like him in the movie.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him in the movie. I don't really feel that bad for him in the show.
Yeah.
I think he looks at Bialystok as someone he wants to aspire to,
Right.
and Bialystok is supposed to be an asshole.
He's supposed to be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't like this song.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be in it. I understand why they put it in to kind of expand everything and to give people a show.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Every musical has what they call an I wish song.
Yeah.
Here's who I am. Here's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And without this song, you wouldn't have that. Like the character has to want something. And in the movie, I feel like it's not this specific desire, and maybe this sort of like aimless longing for your life to be somewhat better than it is a little more universal, but maybe doesn't translate as well to a musical.
Yeah. I just wish that they didn't say he wants to be a producer. That's what he's always dreamed of.
Yeah.
I don't like that they say it, and I don't like the way they characterize it.
I don't disagree with you. I'm saying in terms of the dramaturgy of a musical, it is a necessary song for him to want something.
That's why it makes perfect sense to me that
yeah,
it's there.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
I totally get why you don't like it. I don't really particularly like it either. I'm just saying, like, I do have a master's degree in the structure of plays.
Oh,
and
good.
It's a very, I'm just going to mention that.
Just going to let that drop right there. Just going to let that sit for a minute.
I have a master's degree in dramaturgy.
Okay, there it is.
Yep.
Fantastic. So
From
moving on.
An Ivy League university.
So Bloom decides, I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in. I want this. So he comes back to Max and he says, I'm in. Then they find the play.
Mm-hmm.
They go meet Franz Liebkind.
Yes.
And we're introduced to Liebkind with a song called In Old Bavaria, where he is a crazy old kraut on a rooftop with his birds, with his pigeons, and he's just singing about how great it was in Old Bavaria.
Yeah. It's not a very long song.
It's not very long at all, but it's a great introduction to the character.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite songs in the whole show. Probably King of Broadway and In Old Bavaria up till this point are my two favorite songs.
Which is really interesting because both of them are songs where a character is singing about how good life used to be.
Yeah.
And how they used to enjoy their life and now it's not as good.
And they're great songs. They're
Yeah.
very heartfelt. There's lots of heart in them. I really like them. So they meet him and they say, we want to do your show. And then they meet Roger Debris.
Yes.
And they go to him and they say, you should do this show. Did you read it? He says, yes. And he says, I'm not going to do it.
It's too serious.
It's too serious.
I believe that theater should be lighter. And indeed,
very light.
Very
so
light.
This is a song called Keep It Gay.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we were talking about before.
Yep. It's a whole big old joke about the word. It's funny because it's a song that can only exist in this sort of time period. The joke is that the word gay used to mean one thing and then it kind of switched, but there was a period of time where it kind of meant two things. It meant happy and carefree, and it
Wait, do you think they're actually using the version of the word that means happy and carefree?
No, but I think the joke is that when Leo that's the joke. The joke is that it means two things.
I never thought that. I always thought they just meant gay.
No.
In the modern context.
No, definitely not, because it's set in the 40s. It's set at a time. It's set in the 50s. It's set at a time where gay meant happy and carefree.
Okay.
But the joke to a modern audience is that's not what it means.
Okay.
That's the joke.
All right.
I'm explaining why the joke is funny.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason it didn't make it funnier this time.
No, I don't
That's
know why.
weird because every other time someone's explained a joke to me, it makes it funnier.
Maybe because it's not a super funny joke.
It's not my favorite song in the show,
Yeah.
but I think it's executed very well.
Yes.
And I do think it is, and this is an example of how times change
Yeah.
and how Mel Brooks has changed.
Totally.
It's very, I feel like this is a loaded word, and I don't want to we could spend half an hour just talking about this. I think it's very loving.
Yeah.
It really I think this is a song that recognizes that people who are gay
Yes.
represent a much bigger portion of the population of Broadway
Right.
and musical theater
Right.
than the rest of the country.
Right. There's a there's a bunch of like gay stereotypes, but they're all like sort of theater related gay stereotypes.
That's what I think makes it funnier.
Yeah,
it's that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
much more specific.
And I mean, not for nothing. I'm not saying like this would make something that was offensive okay. If indeed it were, I'm not saying that it is, but like not for nothing, but it's sung by two gay men, like Gary Beach and Nathan Lane of the original cast. Are Gary Beach, who plays Roger Debris, and Nathan Lane, who plays Bialystok, are both gay men.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that actually kind of makes a difference, because it's not like straight people making fun of gay people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's a bit of a showstopper.
Yeah. It's a big old number. It's a big old fashioned Broadway number.
It's real fun.
Yeah.
It's a really fun song. So then they go back to their office. And who shows up at their door but this Swedish woman? This beautiful Swedish woman named Ulla. And
Yes.
she wants to audition for the show because she wants to be an actress. Now, who is Ulla in the movie, the original movie?
A lady.
Yeah.
A blonde lady.
Described as a toy.
Yes. He not only described as a toy, but I have money, now I'm going to buy myself a toy.
All she is Bialystok hires her as the receptionist.
She literally just shakes her boobs at the camera a whole bunch.
She takes off her clothes and shakes around and dances.
Yes.
That's all she is.
Yes.
So Mel Brooks decided we need to expand her character.
Yes.
We need to give her more of a backstory. We need to give her wants and desires. We're going to make her a love interest for Leo Bloom.
Yeah.
Bottom line, that's what he decides.
Bottom. Ha.
Ha ha.
There's a lot of butt jokes.
And there's a song that
Yes.
she sings called When You Got It, Flaunt It.
Yes.
And it's basically a whole song of her talking about when you look like I do.
You may as well put it to good use.
Exactly.
She's taking, I mean, I appreciate that she is taking agency over her own sexuality. I actually, not for nothing, I actually think that's a pretty positive message.
It is.
Yes.
It is. And then I said to you, I think when we were watching it, so basically the trick to making a character that exists to be objectified by men, the trick to giving her agency is to make that also her desire.
Yeah, kind of.
So that's still problematic.
It's not great.
But it's better.
I don't feel qualified to make a determination on this.
Then we come to Bialystok getting the money.
Yeah.
And we go to Along Came Bialy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically him launching himself into, quote, little old lady land.
Yes.
And it's just a giant song of how he is seducing all of these old women.
Who are really happy about it.
Who are real happy about it. I actually am fine with this. I think all of these women know exactly what they're getting. They know what they want.
Yeah. Their sexuality, the way that elderly women's sexuality in the movie was portrayed was almost as like grotesque.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very joyful.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing. He's not really taking advantage of them. It seems to be a fair trade for services rendered. You know, like he's servicing them and they're giving him money.
Yeah.
And they're really happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I won't spoil it because we're going to get to it, but like there's kind of a scene where Bloom is saying like, who has he harmed? He hasn't harmed these ladies. And they're all like, no, absolutely. We're great.
We're fine.
We're fine.
So that's Along Came Bialy.
Yes.
Then we get to the Act 1 finale.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big kind of Les Mis showstopper where all the characters up till this point sing one big song
Mm-hmm.
together. And it leads up to them putting the sign for the show, Springtime for Hitler, on the theater. And then we go into intermission.
Yes.
And it's very important that intermission happens here
Right.
too. So that's intermission. Then we come back.
Mm-hmm.
And we start out kind of slow in the second act.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a song called That Face.
Yes.
And
It's a love ballad.
This is the love ballad between Bloom and Ulla.
Yes.
Where he's just talking about normal things that everyone knows about, which is that, you know, women exist as a test for men and that men need to be really careful around pretty women because, you know, every man is tested by what he calls, you know, short skirts. Like that's a normal, right? Isn't that a normal thing that every guy thinks? So this is problematic for a couple of different reasons.
Oh my God.
It's I understand why they put a love ballad in a show like this.
Yeah.
It just almost creates as many problems as it solves.
Yeah.
if not more.
I don't disagree.
It's also pretty.
It's a nice song.
It's a nice song.
Well, it's funny because we watched a little documentary about the making of the recording of the cast recording.
Yeah.
And Mel Brooks talks a lot about this song because he talks about, I'd never written a ballad before. This was the first time I ever tried my hand at writing a ballad.
Yeah.
And it shows a little bit.
It's a little simplistic.
It's a little simplistic.
I mean, it's not like his stuff is the most complicated stuff in the world.
But he was very proud of having written it. And honestly, for anyone's first attempt at doing anything, it's not bad.
Yeah. Now, I do think Susan Stroman did a great job of directing it and choreographing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say this, like, I saw it.
Yeah.
Any problems that it may create are completely pushed aside when the actors are on stage doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Stroman put on an amazing show.
Mm-hmm.
Her direction of the musical was impeccable.
Yeah.
And it is a big kind of showstopper.
Yeah.
And it's great in the context of a live theater performance.
Right.
It's later when you think about it more that it runs the risk of kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
And for us, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
Then we come to auditions. Now,
This is my favorite scene.
this is one of the other biggest changes.
Yeah.
And now we come to one of my favorite segments, Sir not appearing in this film.
Go ahead. Because
So-
we didn't talk about this character when we talked
No.
about the movie at all.
In the original movie,
Yep.
they want to get the worst play,
Mm-hmm.
the worst director,
Check.
and the worst actors.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the worst actors. So they get to play Hitler, a guy named Lorenzo Saint-Dubois,
Yes.
or LSD to
Yeah.
his friends.
Which is fun. It's funny because it's clearly like this joke, like hippie character.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be like this like
Flower power kind of. Yeah.
groovy man. The actor is 50 if he's a day.
It's real old. It is absolutely a joke of the time.
Yeah.
It's a
it
1967
does
joke
not work.
that I bet was not funny in 1974.
No, it wasn't. No.
I bet it didn't take very long for that to
Yeah.
become unfunny.
That's
And I
right.
think Mel Brooks like leaned into it and
It's
said,
like, oh, it's not funny. Cut it.
it's not funny anymore. That's not going to be in it.
Out.
That character does not work now.
Yeah, they just
So
cut the character.
Poor LSD is
Sir not appearing in this
Sir not
musical.
appearing in this musical.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
That's right.
Yeah. So in the musical, they make a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they going to cast? Well, they have all of these singing and dancing Hitlers, and
I
we
love
have
the singing. It's my favorite scene.
it's a great scene.
Yeah.
I don't want to describe it.
No.
See it. It's great.
It's great.
But one of the Hitlers gets up and says, I'm going to sing Have You Ever Heard the German Band?
Yes.
Or Haben Sie gehört das Deutsche Band?
Wow.
And he starts to sing it. And Liebkind in the audience stands up and goes, that is not how you sing that song. This is how you sing this song.
And he gets up and he does a big old number.
Oh, big old fucking showstopper. It's great. That's when they stand up and
jump
there's
up and they say, "That's our Hitler."
one of the other great lines
Yeah.
of the show. Then they do opening night.
Yeah.
We're right to opening night. And
Mhm.
everything for the rest of the show takes place in the next like several days
I
after that.
appreciate that they had the restraint in all versions of this not to show any of the like rehearsal process.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it doesn't really matter, and it's
Well, it needs to be a surprise. What the show looks
Exactly,
like has to be a
exactly.
surprise.
That's right. That's right.
So then we get to opening night. And there's this great little song called You Never Say Good Luck on Opening Night,
Mhm.
where Bloom accidentally says good luck.
Mhm.
And everyone, even Liebkind,
It's horrified.
Liebkind is horrified that he would say that. Because Liebkind, it's
He's
so
a
weird.
playwright.
There's
Like you know what I mean? Like
my-
this whole thing started with him writing a play. He knows about the theater.
My favorite line in the original movie has to do with Liebkind as a playwright.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna play the line in a second. But basically, he's in the audience watching the show. LSD is up there playing this hippy-dippy Hitler, and the audience is loving it. They're hysterical. That's what makes the show a hit.
Right.
And Liebkind is furious, and he's...
Because they're making fun of Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he stands up, and he's yelling, and this woman next to him says,
Will you please shut up?
You shut up. You are the audience. I am the author. I outrank you.
That's my favorite line in the whole movie. And it's not in the show, because in the show, Liebkind is going to play Hitler.
That's right.
So he does, basically, Bialystok starts wishing everybody good luck to try to jinx it as much as he possibly can.
Right. And doing things like setting up ladders for people to walk under and getting black cats.
Breaks a
and,
mirror.
Yeah.
And then finally, it ends with Bloom saying, well, what do you say? And everyone says, break a leg.
Right.
He says, okay, break a leg. Liebkind walks in to the theater, and we just hear a loud series of crashes, and he just yells in this thing, I broke my
I
leg.
broke my leg.
So he can't go on.
Yeah.
And then we get to Springtime for Hitler.
Mhm.
This is Mel Brooks's magnum opus.
Because this song was in the original movie.
Yeah.
Like he wrote this song for the movie.
I think, And if anybody disagrees, this is actually a fun, super fun argument that I'd love to have.
Great.
I think Springtime for Hitler is the best piece of comedy that Mel Brooks has ever written.
Fair enough.
That of the original holds up better than anything.
Yeah.
It's an amazing big number just about how great Hitler was. And then it ends with a kind of a second part called Heil Myself.
Because Liebkin has broken his leg, they have sent on in his place the director, Roger Debris. And I have a personal anecdote that I would like to relate at this time. So the director has gone on for the character, for the actor, and part of the reason that the show, this is where it all turns on, because part of the reason that the show becomes a success, because people realize, or not realize, but like they're like, oh, it's a joke, because he plays it so like flamboyantly and it's funny. They're like, oh, it's a satire, whereas Liebkin would have played it very seriously, and it would have been a flop. So that's really what it hinges on. All I will say about this plot line is that whenever I watch this or hear this song, I get kind of retroactive, like a little bit of
get some PTSD.
A little bit of PTSD. Because this is something that has happened to me. So a few years ago, actually right before we met, so about like 4.5 years ago, I was directing a production of Measure for Measure, which is a Shakespeare play. And the main character is a nun named Isabella. Our lead, one morning, it was like a Saturday morning, I was sitting at brunch. I will never forget. I got a phone call. Our lead actress, she like really sadly, actually, she had like a death in the family, and she couldn't go on that night. And we're like, I'm getting a call from my producer, and we're like trying to figure out what to do. And at some point, someone says to me, "Well, you can do it." And I was like, nope, cannot. And they were like, "Yeah, you're gonna fit the costume. We can." She was like a very tall, pretty girl. They were like, all right,
how pretty she is has nothing to do with whether the costume fits.
Take the costume out. She's much taller and thinner than me.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just let the costume out and hem it. So I had to go on as the lead character in a Shakespeare play with 6 hours of notice, and it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It literally was, if you've ever, I mean, anyone that's done theater has had the dream that's called the actor's nightmare, which is like you dream that you are going on in a show that you have not rehearsed and do not know the lines. But because I've had that dream before, and it was just so freaking surreal sitting backstage going like, this is a dream, and I'm going to wake up in a minute, I'm going to snap my fingers and I'm going to wake up. It just felt exactly like that dream.
And at some point you get to the, and at one point you get to the point where you say like, no, it's not a dream. I'm dead. I'm dead and I'm in hell.
Yeah, I'm in hell. So I went on with an iPad that had the script on it, because we thought that would look a little better than me like flipping through a script. And they were like, we'll just kind of hold it, because again, the character's a nun, so they were like, we'll just kind of hold it close to your body and it'll look like
a
carrying,
nun would hold an iPad.
No, like a prayer book. Like it'll look like kind of like a prayer book, and it had a cover on it, so you couldn't see like the Apple logo or anything. It was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It was so traumatic. And ever since then, anytime I've ever directed anything, like I basically have a rider like that I tell the producers at the beginning, like if an actor can't go on, I will not go on. We will do whatever we need to do, but I will never do that again. It was the worst thing that's ever happened.
Well, luckily Roger Debris did not have your experience.
He loved it.
So he went on, and he basically did Adolf Hitler by way of Judy Garland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's called Heil Myself.
Yes.
It's a delight. Mm-hmm. I'd say a true delight. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that makes the show so successful, I feel, is just that he makes Hitler so relatable.
Oh my God.
And everyone just really likes Hitler now. Also, I think he changes it so that they win the war in the second act.
Yeah.
So it's a hit.
Yeah. The play's a hit.
Bialystok and Bloom have a song called Where Did We Go Right?
That's right.
So it's a nice little retrospective of everything they did to do it wrong.
Yeah.
And that leads to a whole bunch of things happening. Liebkin comes in and tries to kill them both because they disrespected the Fuhrer, and he and Max get arrested, and Bloom gets away, and basically Ulla comes in, and they have all the money.
Yeah.
The cops know, and they get away and they run to Rio.
Yes, Ulla and Bloom.
Ulla and Bloom run to Rio to be together.
Max goes to jail.
In jail, Max has his big number.
His big number.
Called Betrayed.
Yes.
It's I don't throw this phrase around a lot, but I would say it's a tour de force.
Yeah.
from Nathan Lane.
Yeah. Which apparently he was instrumental in the writing of, like, it was going to be a different song. And
Yeah.
he was like, no, if you're going to give me a showstopper, let me stop the show.
Mm-hmm. It's basically him recounting the entire show back to the audience.
Including like impressions of all the actors and the lines and everything.
He really runs through the whole plot and gives you a quick little blow by blow, all the best jokes from everything.
Yeah.
He even stops and says, intermission.
Yeah.
And then there's silence for a second. Then he comes back into it. It's one of the best songs in the entire show.
It's very good.
Nathan Lane is amazing in it. Really, really amazing.
Kills it.
So he goes to court.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to sentencing. And who shows up but Leo Bloom with Ula.
Fresh from Argentina.
Brazil.
Oh, excuse me, Brazil.
From Rio.
Rio.
He's all tan. And he basically realizes that he abandoned his friend.
Yes.
And so he sings a song called Till Him.
Yes.
And the basic message of the song is, nobody ever treated me like someone until him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's kind of a dick, but who did he hurt? So they go to jail because his plea doesn't do very much. And one thing that they do in the show that they don't do in the movie is they get a happy ending.
Yes.
Because in the movie, it ends they're in jail, and they're just in jail. That's how it ends. In the show, they go to jail, and they are released because they have brought joy to the hearts of all of the prisoners through song and dance.
Is that all you have to do to get released from jail?
Apparently. In Mel Brooks' world.
Yeah.
So they go on to be very successful producers together.
Yes.
And it's very, very
The
sweet.
end.
And there's a song called Leo and Max, just about both of them. And then we get this great little song at the very end called Goodbye, which is essentially all the actors come out on stage and kick everyone out of the theater.
The end.
The end.
The end.
So that's the musical. This is one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It is I hate using the term meta because I think it gets thrown around too much. It's very self-referential.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Mel Brooks musical, which means it's very aware of the constructs that it works within.
Well, it's a Mel Brooks musical about the theater
Exactly.
by people who love theater.
Yeah. As you mentioned before, we watched a wonderful documentary called Recording the Producers.
It was great. I really enjoyed it.
I think of everything, I would say of all the stuff that anyone who's listening to this could actually watch, the original movie and this documentary, I think are the two most important things to watch.
Yeah. So, basically, the documentary kind of goes through almost in exactly the way that you just explained, sort of song by song. It shows them kind of recording the cast album song by song, but in between there's kind of interviews with the different actors and with mostly Mel Brooks, actually, but talking about like the journey of the musical sort of in relationship to all of the different songs.
Yeah.
Which is great. And it's kind of fun to see the actors and like, you know, how they are in real life and everything. But then there's this scene kind of towards the end where they're all kind of sitting around talking after a day of recording, and Matthew Broderick is sitting there and Nathan Lane is sitting there and Susan Stroman's sitting there and Mel Brooks is sitting there. And Mel Brooks kind of just goes, we should make a movie. I'm not going to do a Mel Brooks impression, but he just goes, we should make a movie. We should make a big old fashioned Broadway musical movie. And everyone kind of goes, oh, Mel. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And then Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick start joking about, oh, well, who's gonna play our parts? You're gonna get Danny DeVito. Who do they say? They say like Danny DeVito and Ben Stiller to play our parts.
This was 2001.
Yeah, and Mel Brooks turns very serious and he goes, no, I own this thing. If we do it, you guys are in it, or we don't do it at all. And I just loved hearing that, knowing that they did make a movie and that was true. Like they had the original people.
And let's talk about that movie.
So of the, I would say, 6 main characters, Leo and Max, Roger Debris and Carmen Gia, and Liebkin and Ula, 4 of the 6 are the original actors from the OBC, the original Broadway cast. Nathan Lane.
Is that a thing people say?
Yeah.
The OBC? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
Nathan Lane, Matthew Broderick,
Roger Bart,
and
Gary Beach.
But they did get 2 big old Hollywood stars to play the other 2 roles, and I feel really bad for the 2 Broadway actors that didn't get to appear in the movie after being assured that they would get to be.
Yeah, for Brad Oscar and Katie Huffman, it didn't go as well.
It didn't go
Brad
as
Oscar
well.
did appear in the movie.
He did.
He got a cameo.
I don't believe Katie Huffman was in the movie,
I
unless
don't
she
think
was one
so.
of the little old ladies.
I don't think so.
She would have
Her
been
name's
very
not in the credits.
No, she would have been very distinctive because
Yeah.
she's very tall and very pretty.
She's very pretty.
Yeah.
I met her.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to her. I was very intimidated. She's very pretty, and she had just won the Tony.
Yeah. So Liebkin is played by...
National treasure Will Ferrell.
That's right. That's right. And Ula is played by...
Uma Thurman.
National treasure Uma Thurman. Will Ferrell is too good for this world.
He is too good for this movie.
He's too good for this movie.
He was born to play this role. He does it with gusto.
Yes.
He's wonderful in
A
it.
lot of it was cut. Like,
Yeah.
Liebkin doesn't get most of his songs. He's not a very good singer. He's okay.
What it reminded me of was Robin Williams singing in Aladdin.
Yeah.
There's this story of when
It's a little bit of a talk sing.
Yeah, that when they hired him for Aladdin, he says, "Yeah, but there's going to be songs. I'm not a singer." And then, "Yeah, but do you do impressions of singers?"
Yeah.
He says, "Yeah, I do that." And they're like, "Just do that. You'll be fine."
Oh, that's funny. I've never heard that story.
Oh, yeah?
No, that's
No, I
really
always
funny.
love that.
I like that.
Yeah. So Will Ferrell plays Liebkin.
I love that.
He's great. He's one of the I let's just get it right out there.
Okay.
I want to hear how you feel about this movie.
Go ahead. I mean, yes, you do. Now you want to hear it? I thought you were going to say something.
No, I want to hear how you feel about this movie.
I thought what you were going to say was, I want to hear what you feel about this movie, but here's what I'm going to say first.
Makes me sound pretty shitty. No, I want to hear what you think of this movie.
So I saw this movie in the theater and I really liked it, but I had never seen the Broadway show. So like I didn't have anything to compare it to.
And had you seen the original at that point?
No. Oh, the original.
The original movie.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
I also saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
I had a different experience than you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was partly my personality. Maybe it's just who I am. I don't want to be a hater. Hated this movie.
I'm so sorry.
Hated it.
I don't hate it.
And one of the reasons I hate it so much is that there are things in it that are fucking gold.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel any moment that is truly funny is completely let down by the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And because I went into it loving the original and loving the stage show.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the difference. Like, I don't have that much of a relationship with the original or the stage show. Certainly didn't at the point when the movie came out. But, like, for example, here's a good example. I have never seen the movie version of Rent because I would hate it. I know that I would hate it, so I have not watched it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
That's a challenge. I think we have to do it now.
Oh, God. Okay. But I feel like it's a similar kind of thing. It's like something that we liked when we were young, like teenagers, and now we've sort of gotten older and grown into it, but like we still kind of think back to how we felt about it at the time, and sort of the big movie version of it is not really what we have that primary relationship with.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of talking about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the good stuff.
Okay.
I'm looking at you.
You've got nothing. Well, Will Ferrell, as we said before, is very good.
He's very, very good. I think Nathan Lane is very, very good.
Nathan Lane's performance is very, very good.
Yes.
And I will say it's definitely done in the style of like an old-fashioned movie musical. Like it's kind of heightened. It's not meant to be realistic, but they do kind of get out of that office a little bit, and like you get to see different parts of New York City, which is kind of nice. They made an attempt to kind of distance it from the original movie by having the fountain scene at a different but equally famous fountain.
Yep. Here are some things I don't like about
Yeah,
it.
I don't know. I think we ran out of things we like. I mean, I just enjoy it because, you know what it is? I think I just enjoy it because I like the songs and I like listening to them and I like the story, and this is sort of the vector that I have that enables me to do that.
Here is the quickest way that I can say what my problem is with it.
Yeah.
The original movie is, I think, an incredibly good movie with an incredibly well-written screenplay, and the actors are wonderful.
Yeah.
They put so much care and work into adapting the original movie to the stage. I think they put very little care and work into adapting it back into a movie.
Because it's not a very good movie.
It is in point of fact, I think it's a very bad movie.
Like as a movie.
As a movie,
it is not well done as a movie.
Not even a little.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah, totally. Well, you pointed a couple things out to me as we were watching that I could not then unsee.
Yeah, I feel bad about that.
That's okay. That's all right.
I think that, so I think a lot of it was on purpose, and that's what kills me.
Yeah, they were trying to make it They were trying to make it stylized.
Yeah. I don't think it works,
No, I
though.
agree with you.
It is a couple things.
Yeah, go
One,
ahead.
it is very long.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Which is probably shorter than the stage play. I assume the stage play with intermission is like a good 3 hours.
Oh, I'm sure. But the original movie was less than 90 minutes.
That's right.
I don't think this movie could be more than 2 hours.
Yeah.
It includes too much from the show and yet not enough. It excises, for example, King of Broadway.
Yep.
That's gone. So you don't get to meet Bialystok at all. But it keeps I Want to Be a Producer, which kills
it can't
me.
not keep. We had an argument about this last night. Like, it can't not keep it. That is the showpiece number of the song of the show, at least of the first act of the show.
I don't like it. It's my answer to that.
You cannot cut the song "I Want to Be a Producer" from the show The Producers. You cannot do it.
It's not in the original. I think it's fine.
There weren't songs in the original.
Yeah, well, except for the ones that were there.
Keep talking.
So, one thing that I think I pointed out to you that probably drove both of us the most crazy. It drove me the most crazy.
I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't stop.
And I think this is related to the fact that it is directed
By
Susan Stroman,
who is primarily not even a stage director. Primarily, she's a choreographer. And I know she's gotten very rich and famous from directing, but she's a choreographer.
Yeah. It is not directed well as a movie.
No.
For example, all of the characters, it is staged exactly like the show.
Yeah.
It uses virtually the same sets, all the same choreography, all the same blocking, all the same staging.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens in a show, if you're an actor in a Broadway show, where are you looking most of the time when you're not looking at your fellow actors?
The audience.
You're looking out at the audience, right?
Yeah.
Big audience. They're all over the place. Is there an audience in a movie?
I mean, technically, I guess it's the camera.
Yeah, but it's not like a big audience.
No.
Throughout the entire movie, people do the blocking from the show.
Yeah.
So you might have 4 characters that all turn to, quote unquote, the audience.
They cheat out, but you don't need to cheat out in a movie.
It's not a thing. That's not a thing at all. And it doesn't, it drives me crazy.
You actually, once you notice it, as I said several times now, once you notice it, you can't unsee it, that their eye line goes out to the quote audience, but that audience is in a different place in relationship to the camera.
Yeah.
They're not looking at there are parts where they break the fourth wall and look directly into the camera, but that's not actually even what we're talking about. They like look out to the right and left of the camera as if it were the audience.
It's really bad.
And she sets up the shot, like any shot, it's not shot like a movie. Any shot, she just kind of sets up the camera and goes, okay, this is what the stage
It's
would
not
look
shot like a
okay,
modern
go.
movie.
I mean, there's not one single scene that is like, what's the term for it?
Shot, reverse shot.
Shot, reverse shot. That like you're seeing someone speak and the back of someone's head, and then it flips like that they're having a conversation. Like it that to me is something that looks like a movie. There's not one single scene where 2 people are talking to each other. There's no close-ups on anyone's face. You always see the whole scene.
There are some.
Okay.
There are some, but they're minimal. It's really, really.
I said I was going to stop speaking in extremes for the podcast.
You don't stop being you, sweetie.
I'm doing my best.
I love you.
I love you too.
It is, from a filmic standpoint, quite weak.
Yes.
One thing that drives me crazy is in a Broadway show or stage show, a scene has to start with people entering the scene.
That's right.
And it has to end with people leaving the scene. But in a movie,
You don't need to do
you
it.
can just use editing. You can go from one place to another as many times as you want, as quickly as you want.
There's so many shots of people entering and exiting rooms and like places.
During the We Can Do It scene, they go from inside the office to outside on the street, but we have to see how they got there the whole way.
Well, and what I said to you, so when they're up in the office, one of the funny jokes, and this is from the original 1967 movie, is Bloom is having hysterics, and Bialystok throws a glass of water on him, so he's wet. And the funny line that everybody knows is, "I'm wet, I'm hysterical, and I'm wet." And so then it was very important, apparently, they're singing and singing after this scene, and it was very important to the director, I guess, that they go outside and you see them go down the stairs and across the street, and they're in Sardi's. And I said to you, like, well, the continuity apparently was important, that they couldn't cut, but somehow his shirt is dry.
Yeah. It makes really weird choices in terms of when it wants to be abstract and when it wants to be concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I Want to Be a Producer is a really abstract scene.
Yeah.
It's set in his mind.
It's a dream sequence.
It really is a dream sequence. So we see this kind of very stage-like black box kind of thing, lots of lights and dancers and stuff. And it's very, like I said, it's very abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Then later in the movie, when Bialystok sings Betrayed, and he's recounting all of the things that happen in the movie, it's just him in a prison cell.
Yeah.
In a movie, you can actually show us that stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, that was a chance for the movie to be very cinematic, where it just fell backward to be more theatrical.
Well, and actually the funny thing about that scene is like they could have gone the opposite direction, which is in the play, the reason it's a tour de force is he goes through the whole thing like completely by himself without stopping, and it's like an achievement for the actor. But yet in the movie they were doing a bunch of cuts, but he's just standing there in this sort of very stylized prison cell. So it's like do one or the other. Either make it cinematic where you're showing what happened through flashback, or just plant the camera on him and let him do it so it's clear that the actor is doing something impressive. But don't do all these cuts back and forth just of the actor, because you're lessening his achievement but also not doing anything interesting that adds anything cinematically to what's happening.
I've never been more in love with you than I am in this moment. I find you very attractive.
Great.
No, it's the movie that it made me think about a lot was Singin' in the Rain.
Yeah.
Which Mel Brooks loves.
Yeah.
And so it like make them laugh when Donald O'Connor does the walk up walls thing.
Yeah.
That's like one shot. And they let Donald O'Connor, right?
Donald O'Connor.
They just let him be him.
Yeah.
And they show the whole thing. And then so another scene of the movie where I don't, this isn't like a concrete criticism. This is just me saying I would have done it differently.
Yeah.
When Bialystok goes to Little Old Lady Land and they do Along Came Bialy, they shoot the whole thing in New York, in Central Park. And I think it's too literal.
Yeah.
I don't like that it actually has a place. I don't like that all of these little old ladies they're just in Central Park.
All dressed exactly the same.
Yeah, it works on the stage, but I don't think it works in such a realistic setting. If it had been, because you've seen Singin' in the Rain.
Yeah.
Remember the Broadway melody sequence that's like Gene Kelly imagining, and he has that whole ballet scene, and it's on this big,
yes, I do remember
vague
that. Yeah.
abstract set. That's what I always envision for that scene.
Yeah.
Is do it like Singin' in the Rain. Do a big, colorful, abstract set. So Little Old Lady Land
is a place,
not
Central Park.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a couple of fun cameos in this movie, mostly like Broadway and theater people, but one of the little old ladies, like the chief little old lady, is Andrea Martin, and she's so fucking funny. Like, she's so amazing, just her facial expressions. And she's the one, if you don't know who Andrea Martin is but you've seen this movie, she's the one that towards the end of the song like pulls up her dress and like wiggles herself at Bialystok and like shows her underpants. And it's I have to imagine that Andrea Martin just did that on the day. I can't imagine she was directed to do that.
That wouldn't surprise me.
She's,
for people who don't know who Andrea Martin is, she's the one from My Big Fat Greek Wedding who goes, "What do you mean he don't eat no meat?
It's okay. I make lamb."
That's her. That's Andrea Martin. She's really
She's also
good.
in Hedwig and the Angry Inch. She's their manager.
She absolutely is.
Yeah.
One other thing about the movie that and the play.
Yeah.
I hesitate to say this because I feel like I'm about to talk shit about someone who I don't know.
Yeah. And who we respect for work in other things.
Oh God, yeah. This is a person I like a lot.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of I feel like I'm taking crazy pills moment with the show and with the movie especially.
Yeah.
I don't think Matthew Broderick is good in it. I think he's bad in it, actually. I think he's very bad in it. And I don't know what everyone else is seeing because I feel like they're not seeing the same thing I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Were you seeing the same thing I'm seeing?
I mean, having not seen his stage performance, I will say his performance in the movie did not seem like a cinematic performance. It seemed like it was very, very broad and seemed like a stage performance. And I will say that when I first saw it, my immediate thought, when I saw it in the theater, my immediate thought was, oh, he's doing a Gene Wilder impression.
Yeah.
But he's like not doing it great.
He's doing a bad Gene Wilder impression for an audience that isn't present.
I mean, is that how he performed it in the stage version?
I seem to remember him doing it that way, but in the stage version, I was in the second to last row in the balcony.
Again, like it's a theatrical versus a cinematic performance, right?
When I saw it in the theater, it worked.
Yeah.
When I saw the movie, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
And I mean, that's direction, right? Like that's the stage, the theater director not knowing to say to the actors, because Matthew Broderick is a movie actor. Like, it's not like he's probably been, I mean, other than Uma Thurman and Will Ferrell, has been in more movies and more mainstream movies than the other members of the cast.
I mean, at that point, he'd been in way more movies than Will Ferrell.
I mean, he's freaking Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
He knows how to act in movies. So, I mean, I would put that squarely on Susan Stroman not knowing to rein her actors in. Right?
I think she didn't know how it was going to play.
Yeah. So I don't think that's casting any shade on Matthew Broderick to say that.
Well, I worry that it does.
Well, we think you're great. If you're listening, Matthew Broderick.
We do.
We think you're great.
We really do.
We think I'm sure you're a great person.
So those are just a smattering of my problems with it.
Yeah.
It is not cinematic enough where it needs to be. It's too cinematic where it should just sit back.
Mm-hmm.
It's just messy.
Yeah.
It's really, really messy.
Yeah.
They leave lots of things in. Scenes play for way too long.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many clear, like, little bits of business that they developed over the course of doing the show for years, but there are things that play to a live audience that don't play in a movie.
Yeah.
But I don't blame Susan Stroman for not being the person to understand which is which.
I wish she had like a trusted cinematographer or someone that she could have worked with to be like, this is actually how you direct a movie.
I just wish she hadn't have directed it.
Or that would have also worked.
I wish she had been the choreographer.
Yeah.
The Little Old Lady Land, Alon Kane Bialy, I don't know enough about Susan Stroman to say this. It might. I would not be surprised that if someone told me it was the best thing she's ever choreographed.
Yeah,
because it's
great.
A phalanx of little old ladies doing a tap dance with
their
walkers.
walkers.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Susan Stroman is someone I have a huge amount of respect for.
Yeah, she's not a movie director.
No, and I don't blame her for that.
Imagine this being the first movie you were ever called upon to direct. Like, I don't, it's a challenge, and also it's really hard to separate yourself from the way that you did the stage direction, because she did it very well and it just didn't translate great.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's all. Can we talk about, now that we've talked about all three, can we talk about the female characters a little underrated?
There's a reason we saved this one.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Sweetie, would you like to tell me about how you feel about the female part in all of these pieces?
Bad.
Do you feel that they're underwritten?
Bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
So tell us more.
Okay. Well, in the original version, as you mentioned before, there's the female character, Ula the secretary, who is literally, I will say this again, described as a toy. She basically comes in, shakes her boobs, shakes her ass. That's it. She has no characterization. She's not a person. It's not even a love story. It's just literally, she's just an object.
Yep.
And I appreciate that by the time it came around to making a musical out of this in 2001, they were like, I guess we can't really do that. And one of the things I said, because it's still a little bit horrifying, but one of the things I said when we were watching the movie was, imagine if this was a male director.
Yeah.
Like, it's a female director, and it's still not great. We talked a little bit about this. So, like, you have the character in the musical, and she has a little bit more agency, but she really still is an object to be desired. Her place is that she comes in, and they both drool over her and make lots of comments about her body, and then Leo, quote, falls in love with her, and basically she takes his virginity. And she does have this whole song about when you got it, flaunt it. And the funny thing was, when we were watching the documentary, there's an interview with Susan Stroman, and she's talking about how wonderful Katie Huffman is in the part, and she basically says, Katie brings something amazing to this. She brings this really sweet quality. And, any other actress doing this would have set women back 100 years. And I turned to you and I was like, it kind of does anyway. I would say the little old ladies are better, sort of have more agency and are better female characters, because they kind of know what they want and they go out and get it, and they know exactly what they're getting out of the transaction. And they're not sex objects, except for the fact that they're being used. Well, they're not being used for sex. They're using Bialystok for sex.
They're being used for money.
They're being used for money, which I guess is better.
I think that when it comes down to Ula, there is no depiction of her that is not problematic.
Correct.
It's just how problematic.
Yeah.
That's really, we're talking about it's a conversation of degrees.
Right.
She's very directly problematic in the original.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, that's correct. And then she's problematic in the musical. And then I guess I don't know how to feel about this. So, like, they didn't have the original actress do it for the movie musical. They got Uma Thurman. And I think, because she doesn't sing great, and she
sings
dances okay.
fine.
She sings fine and she dances fine. But Katie Huffman is like a true triple threat, and she won the Tony for this. So I can only imagine that the joke is basically like, we are going to get the famously most sexy woman in Hollywood to do this role. And like, that's kind of the joke. That she is Uma Thurman is the joke. So I'm not sure it's that much better. I don't know. I'm not happy with it.
I think it's problematic to have a character who wants to be an actress and gets cast because because she's fine as a singer and an actress, but is beautiful.
Really sexy.
But when Katie Huffman does it, she's beautiful and she's amazing.
Yes, she's a really good singer.
I feel like she has to be an amazing singer for the joke to work.
Right.
When she isn't that great, she's fine. Uma Thurman's fine.
She's fine.
But she's not as good as some of the other people in the movie, and she's not as good as she needs to be.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Whereas Will Ferrell's part, you don't need to be an amazing singer to do that part. Like Brad Oscar is an amazing singer, but he didn't have to be.
He didn't have to be, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about that. I already got on my soapbox about the gay jokes earlier, so we won't revisit that.
I think it's great to end this episode where we began, on your soapbox. It's a good. I like your soapbox. It's a good soapbox. I think you wear it well.
I don't often step down from it these days. I just stay up there.
There's a lot going on.
It's easier. Do you want to do our quadrant?
Let's do the quadrants.
Okay, great.
As always.
I just want to say really quick, we have not been super consistent about remembering to do all of our segments.
We're trying to get better at that.
We have literally written down on a piece of paper that we are taping to the desk all of our segments so we don't forget to do any of them. Because apparently that's the only way we can remember to do our own segments on our own show.
We think you, the listener, deserve consistency. We're doing our best.
Okay.
So let's do our quadrants.
Go for it.
So let's talk about the musical.
Yes.
I think this sits firmly in the upper right.
Yep.
This is an adaptation that was created by people who love the source material and made something successful.
Perfect.
I think it is a good adaptation made by people who love it.
Yes.
The movie. Musical.
People who love it. Same people.
100%. It's all the same people.
Same people.
They're not different. They didn't stop loving it.
But they didn't do a very good job.
I think it's worth seeing. If you like The Producers, it is worth seeing.
Yeah.
Because there is such good stuff
And
in
if,
it.
And if
it
you're,
just all falls down
and
around it.
if you're interested in seeing these, it's mostly the original Broadway cast. So if you are interested in seeing how they did their roles, like, you should watch this movie.
So that brings us to the end of our episode about The Producers.
Yeah.
I love The Producers.
Yeah.
I hope everyone experiences all of these, and I hope they like the episode, even though I didn't like the movie. It doesn't do it very well.
That's okay. You don't have to like everything.
So in finishing up, well, we will end much the way we always do. Let me tell you about some of the different ways that you can help us and some of the ways you can get in contact with us.
Go for it.
So if anybody enjoys the podcast, there is one big thing that you can do to help. Tell your friends and rate and review on your podcast player of choice. Whether it's Apple Podcasts, giving us a star on Overcast, giving us a good rating on Google Play, we definitely appreciate it. In terms of getting in contact with us, as always, you can go to our website, adapterparishcast.com. You can email us at adapterparishcast@gmail.com. And you can find us on social media at AdaptCast on both Twitter and Instagram.
We also have a Goodreads group.
We do.
And as of this recording, I think it's just the two of us and our friend Hannah.
That's fine.
But maybe by the time you access it, there'll be more people in it. But one of the things...
We use the things we like. I'm on a service called Letterboxd that I enjoy a lot.
One of the things that you will get if you join the Goodreads group is I tend to add the next book like a day before our episode gets released. So if you want like a 1-day lead time on what the next episode is going to be before the episode comes out, you should join our Goodreads group because I usually add it on Mondays and the episode comes out on Tuesdays.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.